sharp razor. And she got me split up real good.
How's it going, Donnie?
And she got me, there's where she got me today, Liz.
You just saying that.
It's terrible. And I bleed
So,
like crazy. And the bearer baby aspirin.
We're live, Mayor.
Okay, everybody ready? Call the meeting to order. This will be the December 2022 work session of the Mayor and City Council for the City of Frostburg. Roll call when you're ready.
Commissioner Donnie Carter.
Here.
Commissioner Kevin Grove.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Ritchie.
Here.
Mayor Robert Flanagan.
Here.
And Commissioner Nina Forsyth is absent attending to a family matter. The first item for you tonight is a Board of Zoning Appeals appointment. Julia Williams has served on the Board of Zoning Appeals for some time now. She has most recently served as the chair. Her term has expired. She has indicated she is willing to serve another term but would like to step down as chair. You're free to appoint anyone you would like to that position at the Board of Zoning Appeals, but Julia has indicated she's interested in serving again. That, if you're all agreeable, that will be a resolution at the council meeting.
Yep.
Okay. There's two ordinances that will be introduced for your consideration at next week's meeting. The first is an update to the Ethics Ordinance. The state of Maryland in their last legislative session changed some of the requirements that the council and your staff need to abide by. Michael Cohen drafted revisions to the city's ordinance to follow the state's requirements. The draft has been approved by the state employees that review those things, so it is ready for your consideration. There is a version that highlights some changes, but I don't think there's much of substance other than adding some definitions and further defining some conflict of interest statements. So, is there any questions on that? Okay. The next ordinance is a ordinance I requested in talking to the mayor. We requested Michael Cohen, the city attorney, to consider and draft. Currently under the city code, we issue solicitor permits. The purpose of that permit is to collect the solicitor's information so that if they are causing problems, we can provide that information to the police department and we can contact the parent company that these people are working under. However, we can't really limit who is a solicitor in the city because of the First Amendment and the freedom of speech. But the terminology solicitor permit kind of provides the sense that we are endorsing what they are doing because we're permitting them to do that. So in talking, after there was some of these electric utility people going around switching who your provider is and some complaints we received, we asked Michael if it made sense to change the terminology from solicitor permit to solicitor registration. So we're collecting their information, but they're just registering with us. And it's not like we are permitting their specific activity because we can't really do that. And Michael agreed that that was a good amendment and it wasn't just semantics, but it has substantive meaning. So it doesn't really change anything about how the solicitor's permit works. It still exempts children from having to get them when they're selling their Girl Scout cookies. and it still exempts religious organizations from going door to door. Like, they don't need a permit, but everyone else selling their Amway or whatever would need a solicitor's registration going forward. Fees remain the same. Is that agreeable? Okay.
It'll help.
All right, thank you. We have a few ARPA things we wanted to discuss with you. Nick has been working with some of his officers in the department to identify some technology upgrades that they would like and or need. So he has a few items he'd like to present to you first.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Good afternoon. The ARPA request I want to propose to you is to replace our live scan fingerprinting hardware and software. A number of years ago, all of the criminal justice agencies went away from ink fingerprinting. It's all done digitally by live scan communications now. So we have the hardware for it, where it'll scan your fingerprints in, and there's software that goes along with that has all the codes for statutory violations, all these ORI numbers, different things like that. So our system is outdated, our hardware is no good anymore, and our software is no good anymore. So we're at the point where we have to make an upgrade at some point either way. In talking with Elizabeth, Commissioner Grove, and one of the IT people from the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, we have a couple of options. If we have no funding options, we could look at downgrading and buying something out of our budget. That might be around $10,000. If you bought like a laptop and a fingerprinting pad and the software, ideally we'd like to replace what we have, which is kind of a metal cabinet with a fingerprinting device built into it, camera built into it, computer monitor. That's pretty standard for what you would see in a police department, especially for fingerprinting of criminal arrestees. So that's the basic request. To replace that would cost somewhere around $30,000, probably costs associated with that as well. So if we went the ARPA route, we would ask for as much as $35,000 if we were going to replace what we had, or we could look at downgrading, buying something less with ARPA funds, or buying something out of the budget. That would allow us, regardless, to fulfill our responsibilities to fingerprint criminal arrestees. If we had to, without the system and software, we would have to take them to the county jail or the courthouse, or maybe FSU, depending on how that goes, and that's not really ideal, especially when the statute requires us to release somebody on a criminal citation. Then theoretically they would only be here a short time, fingerprinted, photographed, given a ticket, leave. But if we had to drive them to Cumberland and back, it just ties people up for a long time. So ideally we have our own and take care of our own business and not burden other departments or tie people up. The second issue that ties in, that's a policy decision for the city. Commissioner Grove and I discussed it briefly today. We could consider the capability of doing civilian fingerprinting again. We would like to be able to fingerprint our own criminal justice employees. Right now, if we hire a police officer or dispatcher, we have to send them to another department or a commercial entity to be fingerprinted. If we had that capability, we would also be able again to fingerprint the kids that work at the pool, around the U's and those sorts of things. There are some important caveats though. Commissioner Grove and I do not want to compete with private businesses. That's not what we're interested in getting into. A lot of them have popped up lately. That's an enterprise of its own. We'd like to be able to do our own. We'd like to be able to do the pool employees, and once in a while you have somebody maybe it would be appropriate to do. But there are a lot of caveats to that. It's the city would have to open another bank account just for those funds, so we'll have to discuss further with Elaine on that and Commissioner Carter and folks. Audited by the state, they recommend all the transactions be just by credit card or debit card. They recommend require you to open the account, recommend we get with the bank. Some of them will give you the credit card device readers if you open the account with them. So there's a little more logistics to do civilian fingerprinting, and there would be a cost for civilian fingerprinting. So if we were to do city employees, we would have to pay the transaction fee and stuff, but not necessarily any additional fee that you would typically see a commercial enterprise charge. So that's more of a policy decision, I think, for you all and Elizabeth and Commissioner Grove and myself. We could talk about further, but regardless, we do need the new equipment to fingerprint criminal arrestees, and the cost is the same for the hardware and all that stuff either way. So pretty new. I just talked to the guy yesterday, but he answered a lot of questions that we have. So if there's any action you'd like me to take now, I certainly will. Otherwise, what we plan to do is get quotes from different vendors that are approved by the state, find out the hardware costs, the software costs, and those sorts of things, and come back. If you could give me some direction, if you think you'd be inclined maybe to lean toward ARPA, if we should look at replacing what we have, or maybe the lower end stuff, where we could find out both. But
Ken,
we
what
would.
what do you want to do?
Well, I'd like to replace what we have with what we have. And one thing that Nick did mention was the reasoning you can do this is if somebody is wanted in Texas and they come through Frostburg, you get an immediate reply that, hey, this guy's wanted somewhere else, or illegal immigrant, anybody who is being looked at as some type of bad guy, you get the immediate response. In the old days with the rolled fingerprints, you didn't get them back for months. Yeah, but it's a good system. I think Commissioner Ralston was here when we got our first that live scan machine, so that's how long we've had it. So to me, I'd like to replace what we have.
Any heartache? No. Okay.
Okay, so what I think we'll do, Chief, is put the live scan replacement up to $35,000 as an ARPA approval. You can, we'll have to talk about the right way to procure that, and then if it's over $25,000, the mayor and council will have to approve that
Sure.
at the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Get your information together, let us know what you're looking at.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a way to get through until the next meeting?
Oh, we'll be fine. Yeah, we've been getting through for a while, actually, until we were able to
Yeah.
talk with the IT folks anyway.
It's
So
just such an inconvenience, because then we have to send an officer to the county jail, we have to send the officer somewhere to do all this because it has to be done.
Sure.
Okay. You get the information, we'll get on it, we'll get it taken care of.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Okay.
And then Nick, actually, you have another one. I don't know if Matt told you. The police laser radar units.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I had thought maybe we were looking at switching back to the budget on that, but
Yeah.
ideally, if we could do ARPA funds, that would be great. I'm glad to talk about it if you like, or
Up to you.
I think we're paying for that out of the regular budget because the digital ticketing system that he had budgeted for, we decided to hold off on that for right now. So he does have ample funds in the budget to just go ahead and order those radar units
Okay.
or LiDAR units.
sure, sounds good. And we could always confer again if we find a problem and come back
Okay.
later. So.
Sorry for that.
Oh no, thank you both.
As you know, the fire department did provide the financial documents that were requested after that special meeting with the fire department. I wanted to bring it to your attention now that this is the next meeting that we've done some ARPA project approvals. If you wanted to go ahead and allocate funds to the fire department at this time with a resolution, with the caveat that the truck needs to be ordered, and the funds have to be obligated by ordering it prior to the ARPA deadline of December 31st, 2024.
Okay.
I would also recommend some type of written agreement if you had any other ideas on the use of the truck, or, reporting how they're gonna substantiate the money and where it went and that type of thing.
Is $500,000 the number you want that to be?
I would think that'd be a fair number, yes.
Okay.
Because I think what we're looking at here would be about a 25-year investment. Because that's about how long this last truck has lasted. So of course, I would assume we may all be gone, at least from the council in 25 years from now. So it would be an upgrade for up to 25 years. So I think 500,000 is fair.
Okay.
Yeah, I think at that last meeting, looking at the price of everything, I'm not, above giving them a little more than that too. Because that's a lot for them to take on. It really is.
Well, I know that they're getting 500,000 from the state.
Right.
Uh,
What was the total cost of
They-
that? Can you recall?
I think the last number we got was 1.8 million.
Right. So
So we're getting close to where, and of course we know we give them $250,000 a year every year. That if they needed some funding or some payment of a loan, I'm sure it could come out of some of that could come out of that money that we give them. So they have about 1.1 maybe 1.2 million if we give them the 500,000. So that's well on the way to paying for it. But I'm not opposed if we want to raise it a little bit. I'm not opposed to that either. And again, it would still make it easier.
Right.
And again, this money will probably never ever come around again to be able to do something like this.
Right.
Same with water and sewer,
Yeah.
stuff that is also going on.
Yeah.
Just throw that
So-
out there and see what they come back with. I mean, if they come back and need more, then we'll talk.
And so
They
that.
requested 80, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, they also wanted a vehicle for the chief out of that money that they requested. It was more than just for the ladder truck.
Right.
To that point, Commissioner Carter, when we get closer to December of '24, if all of the funds haven't been spent, there could be, and that's where you wanted to direct additional funds because they had a gap. That decision could be made later. But I think they would appreciate a ballpark commitment at this point,
Knowing, yeah.
or a minimum commitment. Okay. Very well. Public Works. You had approved paving as an ARPA expense, and then almost all of the paving that was done this year was Columbia Gas, but 100.
We're looking at about $97,000
Okay.
more.
So
Okay.
just that's an update, and a dollar amount wasn't set on the well upgrade at Savage Springs.
Repair.
Well repair, sorry, to the pump. But that's probably gonna be a little more than we originally told you, but we're working through that. So,
Okay.
nothing, it needs to be done in form of a resolution, but we just wanted to update you on the status of those two. Am I missing anything, Hayden?
Stuff has started at the water treatment plant on the full system upgrade, but other than that, nothing major.
Okay, very good. Special presentations, we're adding one to the county tourism office for their work on Up TV feature this past weekend. But the Spirit of Frostburg Award will be presented to Dr. Caravaggio Thomas, and your fellow councilwoman, Commissioner Forsyth, will be the one presenting that because Barb will be on vacation. And then the Chief and Commissioner Grove have some police department recognitions, introductions, et cetera, that they would like to do. Moving on for discussion, Sergeant Mulaney in the police department has been working with the chief to apply for a grant for a license plate reader. You may have seen in the paper that the county and Cumberland have been successful in obtaining these grants. So, Nick, if you wanted to talk about that a little more.
Yes, ma'am, certainly. So the state of Maryland is trying to promote license plate reading hardware and software in the western region of Maryland. They have grant funding for it, and they've actually reached out to the local police agencies and done like a regional meeting with us, basically saying, hey, we want to get these out here. Please apply for this grant. So Sergeant Mulaney did all the research. He's exceptional with technology, software, all that stuff. Some of these things have to be not exactly approved by the state, but they have to be compliant with the state's rules. So they checked all that stuff. They found the right vendors. And the long story short, they applied for this grant for license plate readers for 2 police vehicles and a speed trailer that would have all the components of a speed trailer, which is awesome, plus license plate reader capabilities. It's not a ticketing system. It does not have ticket capabilities. I asked about the license plate reader on the speed trailer, and that's more for data gathering. Incidentally, it could help if there were like repeated burglaries in the neighborhood where the speed trailer was. You could look at the tags and went by, those sorts of things. It would flag like stolen vehicles and that sort of thing that went by and notify certain computer systems in the criminal justice world. But it's basically free money. There's no match or anything like that. So if we're approved, we would certainly recommend that we accept that. That would be great. They might approve it all, $73,443.46. They might approve less, or they might deny it. So that's just pending. When we apply for grants, we do review them all with Ms. Stallman, Commissioner Grove, and Ms. Jones, the finance director. So we look at it on the front end and make sure there aren't any problems. We're just pending approval and basically the offer to accept it. So I can bring that back to you if that offer comes, or we can proceed
let us
with
know.
accepting it, or whatever you wish.
And just to add, so you know what these are, you may have seen them on state police cars. They look like 2 units that set on the back of the cars, and as you drive by cars, it reads those tags and lets you know insurance violations,
Stolen.
if they're stolen vehicles, anything that would be of interest.
Okay, that sounds good.
Thank you.
Next, Brian has a proposal that came from a community organization.
Yes, the proposal came from the Allegheny County Disc Golf Club, and it's for a disc golf course at Hoffman Park. The club, it's a recently formed club. Right now, I think there are about 50 people involved in it. And they're basically just looking for a public disc golf course. And one of the locations that they were hoping to do was Hoffman Park. The location there would just be a 9-hole disc golf course. They're actually pretty simple, pretty inexpensive. It's just a matter of setting up the goals and just kind of clearing the undergrowth that might be in the fairways. They would do it in the wooded area at Hoffman. It wouldn't really interfere much at all with the walking trails. It might cross them on occasion. But it's they have a course designer from one of the companies that they typically use for designing courses. They also sell the equipment and packages for it. So they were looking at a 9-hole disc golf course. The cost would be around $8,500 to get that in at Hoffman Park. So the Rec Commission approved the project and wanted to see if we could come up with some funding for it. So 2 ways to fund that. I guess one course would be ARPA, which would allow it to open in the spring. The other would be to propose it as a POS or Community Parks and Playgrounds project. With the $8,500 price tag, we usually go for our projects are usually a little more expensive than that. But if we did it with that funding, it would probably hold off until most likely the following spring. So it would just be a matter of whether or not we wanted to fund it with ARPA. If so, it would probably be ready by this spring. Otherwise, we try and fund it with Community Parks and Playgrounds or POS and fund it the following year.
POS, we don't deal with that until what part of the year? I can't remember.
Typically this year we didn't get approval on everything until right around August. Then we got to get everything in Board of Public Works approval, so we wouldn't be looking until the spring of next year if we did it that way.
Any way POS could backfill it if we
it's, typically the project has to be approved. Once it's approved, we can do it. We can hold off on approval by the county, and that would probably be right around August. Then we would have to get a letter of concurrence. With a letter of concurrence, we could get it done in the fall, assuming that gets approved.
8,500 is not a lot of money.
Right, I'm just telling you, yeah, if we had to, we could just find it in our budget somewhere probably.
I'd say out of park maintenance expense, but that's probably about 10 or 15% of the park maintenance
Yeah.
expense budget.
Hayden spent it on that bridge.
Yeah, hate to spend it.
Yeah, I don't have any heartburn either way, I just, you guys good?
Though this won't be like a Jack Nicklaus course or Pete Dye.
Not that I know of. No.
Just
I don't know if
wondering
they play
maybe
disc golf.
Maybe they did these courses too.
Will we get a complimentary disc golf lesson?
I'm sure the club would be happy to do that. Yeah, I think so.
All right. Something new and different.
So
Cool.
add that to the ARPA approvals. Okay,
Thank you.
Yes.
thank you, Brian. On Monday, Commissioner Forsythe and Hayden and I met with Optimize Renewables, who for a little over a year now has been working on the city's microgrid plan. That was funded through Maryland Energy Administration to look at resiliency in the city's energy supply, to be able to continue critical operations in the event of a disruption. So early on, kind of right when Hayden started, we were identifying critical loads, one being this building, one being the community center to use in the event of as a shelter because they have cooking facilities there, the water treatment plant, the pumps up at the water system in general, and then Piney Dam. No, and the street department, sorry. So they have come back with a very lengthy plan that has solar distributed in various parts of the city, on roofs, at the street department, on canopies, on parking lots that would be here and in the new parking lot across from the community center. Ground-mounted solar at the dam and at the water treatment plant. What's important is this is kind of a bundled package. It is estimated to cost around $6 million if we were to do it ourselves. But what they're recommending at a later point in time, once we have more time to digest the plan, is considering soliciting proposals from environmental finance companies, which would be similar to the proposals Commissioner Forsythe has brought to you in the past, where these third-party companies build the whole system and we just agree to pay a certain rate for electricity for the next 20 years. The city doesn't own it, the city doesn't have to maintain it, the city doesn't have to decommission it. It's all on the responsibility of the third party. The city's had difficulty in the past getting third parties interested because our load is not high enough to meet like what they see as an economical project. The advantage of working with Optimize Renewables is they have been in the industry for as long as the industry has been around, and they are subject matter experts, and they can vet any proposal for us, and they've come up with this plan that is focused on the city being able to function should Texas electricity grid failure or a North Carolina substation, attack, or just a really bad weather event. We'd still be able to provide water. We'd still be able to provide police protection, we'd be able to do a warming shelter or cooling shelter at the community center. So what they would like to do is the state of Maryland has grants available to implement these plans. Frostburg State University was the only recipient of the grants last year, and they received $750,000 to be put towards their resiliency implementation. They're 1 year ahead of us on everything. So they would like to request $1 million or work with the city to put in an application for $1 million, which would lower the cost of moving forward with this. But those numbers that we saw, assuming energy rates stay at the 9.5 cents that you just agreed to with Freepoint Energy, would save the city money over the next 20 years, assuming rates stayed the same.
Like $8.5 million.
Not that much.
It was a lot. Yeah.
But, I mean, ultimately, we knew this was a no-go if it was going to cost the city more. So, here's an opportunity to save the city money, increase our resiliency, and reduce the carbon footprint of the city. So, I wanted to run this all by you. The plan is going to be submitted formally tomorrow, and I can provide you all with the executive summary that highlights their recommended plan. But wanted to get your consensus with moving forward with that $1 million application to the state.
See what we got. Good. Okay.
Okay, very good, thank you. Usually in the month of December, you offer your employees a bonus. This year is unique in the sense that we have a lot of ARPA money, and we haven't spent a lot of ARPA money yet, which means it's collecting interest, and a fair amount of interest that the city did not budget for. And so, based on the interest earned so far this year, it's my recommendation that we would do a $1,000 bonus for the employees pre-tax, so they would net maybe $750, $800 after taxes. But the interest earned year to date from July 1 till now would cover that bonus. Okay, 2 questions. We have one employee that's contractual that works part-time in City Hall, part-time in Parks and Rec, but he has a full-time job. Would you authorize that for that employee as well? And then we have a part-time employee in the police department, and I need a number for that position.
How about 500? How many hours they work a week?
About 24 to 28 a week.
About half. Well, half or a little bit more if you wanted.
7.
7.
Yeah.
700.
Okay,
Good.
very good.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that will be, they're not anticipating that, and it'll
We're
be
not
much
gonna spend more,
appreciated.
we're not spending more ARPA money, I'm telling you, we're gonna stop right now.
Wait till 2024.
We're gonna,
January meeting. The mayor is going to be unavailable for the work session date, and the council meeting date conflicts with the PACE event in Annapolis this year. It normally falls on the following week, but this year it's conflicts. So the mayor and I discussed suggesting to you that the January meeting just be canceled. I think we can push everything to February. I think we've been working in advance to try and get everything tidied up here, and I don't think any big contracts or anything are going to need to be approved. Is that agreeable to?
all right. You can take the month off.
Okay.
Okay.
Vacation.
Yeah.
Is
Is that paid? I knew you were gonna say that. Knew it, I'd have bet my, oh, that's right, we don't get bonus, that's right. Gonna bet my bonus on it.
That's my bonus.
Yeah.
That is my bonus.
That's right. You got it.
Okay, anything else from the mayor and council? Okay. There is a closed session on your agenda tonight, so I will just need someone to read that closing statement.
Under the annotated code of Maryland, Article 3, Section 305B3, a closed session may be held to consider the acquisition of real property for the public purpose and matters directly related to the acquisition. Closed session is required for the purpose of discussing property acquisitions to facilitate redevelopment of a blighted property and the development of a city downtown parking lot, and in order to protect the city's bargaining power in a real estate transaction.
Need a motion in a second.
Make a motion, we accept.
Second.
Moving second, all in favor?
Aye.